お嬢様。
Hello my lords and ladies, Joe here, and today I'm going to talk to you about my specialty, the Final Fantasy XIV free trial. Now I've already done a video talking about things that you might not want to do in the free trial. But what about all those things that you may gloss over but really should consider when you're playing the game for free? Now if you're playing Final Fantasy XIV just for the MSQ, and once you complete Heavensward you just want to dive into Stormblood, hey, more power to you. But for those of you who want to complete the major time sinks available in A Realm Reborn and Heavensward for free, let me help you get the most bang for your non-existent buck. And speaking of things you can do for free, how about subscribing to the channel? It'll help me produce content that you can sink your time into. The first thing I'm going to suggest may seem obvious to some or a hassle to others, but leveling all available jobs to level 60. As a trial player, there are practically no disadvantages to leveling every job you can to the Heavensward cap. Now many of you have probably picked or will start a class, maybe even unlock the job and thought, nah, this isn't for me, and drop it before even getting to level 50. Well, let me tell you from experience that you should see all of them to level 60. Playing a job before a level cap, while functional, they don't really come together until the kit is complete. Also, I know by leveling all the jobs, I have learned to appreciate some of them that I had previously written off as jobs that just weren't for me. When I first started Machinist, I wasn't too fond of it. I was going from tanking to ranged DPS, and it seemed cluttered and mashy. It wasn't until I was eased into the role by leveling Bard to the Heavensward cap, and then going back to Machinist that I found a new appreciation for it. Similarly, after the Summoner rework, I found myself wanting something more challenging for casting, and I really started to like Black Mage. And here's a tip, don't just get them to level 60, run level 50 and 60 content with them as well, to see how it feels in the field. On the flip side, you might find a job that you actually don't really mesh with, and then you'll know for sure when you start paying, you can put it on the back burner to level. And speaking of playing your jobs, let's talk about trials and raids. The disadvantages that trial players have are that they cannot form parties or use the market board / trade for food and potions. But don't let that hold you back. Now if you're coming from another MMO, you might be thinking, raids from 10 years ago? There's no way anyone runs those. Well, welcome to Final Fantasy XIV, baby, where we got a little thing called evergreen content. And while these raids aren't nearly as popular as their current content, they are not dead. And I really want to emphasize running this content synced. It breaks my heart to see people get completely carried through the Coils Bahamut by some endgame players without experiencing the fights, just to get the story of the Coils. The accomplishment I felt when I cleared all of the coils synced with the epic showdown against Bahamut was one of the best experiences I had in the game. Yes, it is harder. Yes, it will take longer. But trust me, it is worth it. I was almost sad when I found out that Alexander had 2 tiers of difficulty, and clearing the normal version had such a diminishing effect when compared to the experience I had in the binding coils of Bahamut. Luckily, Alexander Savage was still a lot of fun. And for those of you who want top tier difficulty, there is content in the trial that would be considered harder than even normal Savage fights, and that's the second coil of Bahamut Savage. These fights are very hard, and with the single reward being titles that players can unsync and clear to get, groups running this content are exceedingly rare. T7S is notoriously brutal, having broken every static I've joined to clear it. So it may be difficult finding groups to clear those. And finding groups can be the hardest part of raiding in the trial. As stated before, you are at the mercy of other players to form groups to run content. So you might feel like you need to keep a constant eye on the party finder and pray someone is running the content you want to run. But luckily, thanks to Discord, there are communities dedicated to running old content that you can use to find groups. Or theoretically, start your own, so long as you get a subbed player to form the party in-game. The other hurdle you have is without access to the market board, nor trading, you have to get your own food. Yes, Even if this is old content, many groups will expect you to bring food, especially for minimum eye level no echo parties. For the best dietary options, you'll have to make your own, which leveling your culinarian is another time sink in itself. But if you want an alternative, that brings me to the next time sink: your Grand Company and Squadron. Now you should level your Grand Company to a minimum of 2nd Lieutenant, as this opens up food items, items you need to complete Relic Weapons, and a cute Chocobo Chick minion. But you should consider getting it up to the Captain rank, which gives you access to emotes, orchestron rolls, and material coffers, which give you a gacha style reward in the form of A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood minions, or even rare mounts. And to get this rank, you'll need to level up your squadron, which takes some time. Now if you're like me and you want to get specific squadron members to perfect your squad, then that's its own time sink. And I'll leave a link of all the available members and how to get them in the description. But squadrons eventually give decent rewards in the form of the missions they run, or by what chemistry your members have. And since I already mentioned it, let's move on to another way to spend your time: Relic Weapons. In the trial, you have access to 2 sets of Relic Weapons: the Zodiac Brave Weapons and the Anima Weapons. Let's talk about the Zodiac Brave Weapons. Even to full sub players, this is considered one of the biggest grinds in the game, but it is even harder for trial players. The disadvantages are your level 60 cap, which means you can't blow through any of the trial and dungeon requirements, but worse yet, you don't have access to the market board. So what does that mean? Well, there is a huge material requirement that you now have to get yourself. And also there are master crafting requirements, which means you'll need to make things yourself. But I can give you some tips to ease the pain a little. For the material requirement, you're going to need to be an Omnicrafter regardless, so make yourself some high quality level 10 equipment. Fill it up with any materia you got. If you took my advice and leveled your squadron, then you'll have access to the Squadron Spirit Bounding Manual. You can also equip the Patriot's Choker and Bracelet, which you can get from your Grand Company for 720 and 1210 seals respectively, and the Meteor Survivor's Ring, which you can get through a side quest. Check out this video for more info. Then run Halatali repeatedly until you have all the level 1 materia you need. Do the same thing with level 37 gear and the Arum Veil to get the level 2 and 3 materia. For level 4 materia, the best option by far is the ARR Beast Tribe dailies. As for crafting, you'll need all your Disciple of Hand and Land classes to at least level 50. For tips how to do that and the demimatria you'll need, check out this video. But a tip I can give you is not to attempt the crafting until you get each of your Disciple of Hand classes to level 53 and have access to Ishgard in Heavensward. That way you can purchase tools and gear you'll need to meet the synthesis requirements from Eorzea and Noralice in the Pillars. The Anima weapons are far easier to do. As a trial player, you are at a very minimal disadvantage. Sure, you can't blow through all the dungeons and trial requirements, but none of them take too long to queue for. As for the light grind, even though you can't form your own party, there is, at least on Crystal, almost always a light farm party in the party finder. And no one will mind a level 60 tagging along. Now I mentioned beast tribes, and yes, this is another major time sink that you should take full advantage of. With next to no disadvantages of being a trial player, it is full worth the effort to max out all of the ARR and Heavensward tribe reputations, as they are a daily reputation grind. With a 12 quest daily allowance, it is a guaranteed time sink. The rewards are well worth it. It'll help with your crafting, it is a great way to spend your gil, and not to mention all that juicy lore you get to learn about the beast tribes of Eorzea. Next, let's get into the Palace of the Dead, more specifically, the Necromancer title. As a trial player, if you want to solo the Palace of the Dead, the disadvantages are that you don't have access to all the classes, so if there was one you really wanted to use that isn't available, sorry. You don't have access to the super potions nor endgame meals that Necromancer runners like to have. But these disadvantages are minimal. You do have access to Machinist, which is considered the best class to run, and to Warrior, who if you don't like to kite is also an amazing pick. As of this recording, this is what I am doing, And to be honest, I am very glad I can focus on the Necromancer title without worrying about having to pay, because Palace of the Dead takes a very long time. It will take you a considerable chunk just to max out your Aether pool, another chunk to get the potsherds needed, and even more so to do actual attempt runs. It takes several hours to get anywhere in Palace of the Dead, and all it takes is one mistake to bring you back to square one. But I'm actually having fun doing it. What started out as just a curiosity is now becoming a little bit of an obsession. So if the Necromancer title does intrigue you, I would highly recommend you get your Culinarian capped and do it for free. For trial players, the one real suggestion I can give you is to not cash in the sacks you will inevitably be picking up until you switch over to being a full sub. Item space is always an issue for trial players, and a lot of the items you can get fetch a great price on the market board. And while we're on the subject of hard to obtain titles, let's talk about Doman Mahjong and the Mahjong Master title. With literally no disadvantages of being a trial player, if you are interested in learning and playing Mahjong, the trial is the place to do so. In fact, I've heard that there are people who sign on to the trial and never leave just to play Mahjong. If you were like me, you knew nothing about this game before playing Final Fantasy XIV. But after having dived into it, I can say it is legitimately a lot of fun. The only downside is that the queue times can be extremely long, but it does seem that more people are playing these days. And hey, you can help add to the player pool. But getting the title of Mahjong Master is no joke, with only 0.2% of players having obtained it, compared to the 0.5% that the Necromancer has. So if you learn to love Mahjong and want to get that elusive title, you may as well do it in the trial. And while we're on the note of Golden Saucer games, let's talk about Triple Triad. Collecting all the cards available to you in the trial can be quite the feat. If you want to have a complete collection, you might as well start for free. There are some particularly hard cards to obtain. First, Archbishop Thoradin VII, which is a very rare drop from the extreme trial of Thoradin's reign. My suggestion is keep an eye out for loot parties and pray you get it. Next is the Azul Magia and Siegfried cards, which require you to get your Blue Mage to level 60, another big time sink, and then complete the quest Blue Cheese to make them available. Next is Zidane Tribal, which is a rare drop from Golden Triad cards. If you don't want to spend all your MGP getting this, then I suggest playing in open tournaments. The reward for first and sometimes second place can be multiple Golden Triad cards. And lastly, Van, which you get for winning 300 Triple Triad roulette matches. And yes, that will take you a lot of time. I'll leave a link of the NPCs you can play in the description so you can find the roulette players you might want to face. Now for what I consider to be one of the most frustrating time sinks that I have done, the Sightseeing Log. While the Heavensward Sightseeing Logs are easy to see and only require the correct emote, and sometimes the ability to fly in a zone, it is the A Realm Reborn log that can be a real hassle. Not only can you not see the vistas where you need to stand, some being not at all easy to get to, but you also need to be at these vistas at a specific time with specific weather conditions. So yeah, getting these two things to match up isn't exactly the quickest of endeavors. In the description, I will leave a link with the log's required time, weather, and emotes. And another link that I wish I had when I was doing this that accurately predicts the weather for zones. Use these to figure out what real-world time these things match up and where you need to be. And a suggestion, get there early, because some of these have a really tight window and pinning down exactly where you need to stand can take longer than you might think. By completing the ARR Sightseeing Log, you'll receive the fledgling Abkaliu minion, and the Heavensward log grants you the Veteran Explorer title. And on a side note, it wouldn't be one of my trial videos if I didn't once again mention PvP. At the time of this recording, it is still unavailable to trial players, and Square Enix still hasn't made any new statements regarding this, with the last thing that they said in February 2021 being that trial players would eventually be let back in. But if by some miracle this comes to pass, you should definitely check out PvP. There are a bunch of glamour items and even mounts to get. So if you can get them while the game is still free, I recommend doing that. But as I said, don't hold your breath when it comes to getting access to PvP. If this is the only thing left you want to do in the trial, then you might as well switch over to a full sub. Because to be honest, I think they've either forgotten or just don't plan on letting trial players back in. There you have it. Major time sinks that you can do for free. What do you think? Are you a trial player that's going to do any of these? Have any suggestions on things trial players should do that I might have missed? Let me know in the comments below. I hope I've earned your like and sub. Remember, those are free as well. Good luck making the most of the trial, and I'll see you in the world of tomorrow.